Dear dreamer, fairy tales aren't just for children. They whisper truths the real world forgets. About wonder, love, courage, and a little bit of magic. Tonight, forget the noise out there. It's just you, me, and a story that knows exactly where to take you. Then let's begin. In the heart of Colombia's dense northern forests, where the Sierra Nevada de Santa Marta reaches toward the sky and the Andean foothills descend into misty valleys, an ancient guardian stirs as the wind begins to sing. Locals whisper her name with both reverence and fear, La Madremonte, Mother of the Forest. They say she was born from the first raindrops that fell upon sacred earth, a spirit woven from moss and vine, crowned with wildflowers. When intruders dare to fell a towering ceiba or burn vines for campfires, she gathers storms at dusk and unleashes her wrath in crackling thunder and torrential rain. Generations of indigenous Arhuaco and Kogi communities have honored her with offerings beneath moonlit palms, knowing that her protective fury preserves the balance between people and nature. Modern explorers find footprints pressed into softened soil, glimpses of a figure drifting through fog-laced clearings, or gusts of wind that form shapes reminiscent of a woman's silhouette. In modern times, as illegal logging and mining threaten her domain, rumors of storm spirals and missing trespassers have reignited her legend among conservationists. Step beyond the edge of cultivated fields, and you may hear her call, an echo of thunder that reminds you the wild has its own voice. This story plunges us into the emerald corridors of Colombia's most remote woodlands, tracing Madremonte's origins through ancestral rites, storm-swept nights, and the timeless bond between earth and sky. Long before Spanish chroniclers set quill to parchment, Arhuaco elders spoke of a living storm deep in the mountains. They told of a woman emerging from swirling winds, her form constructed of tangled roots and verdant leaves, hair woven from vines, eyes glinting emerald like dawn dew. Thunder was her heartbeat, each flash of lightning a ribbon of her restless spirit across sky-fallen canopies. When hunters took more than they needed or newcomers carved paths through sacred woods, the earth trembled under her power and storms gathered in her wake. Birds fell silent as raindrops began to drum on leaf litter, streams swelled to reshape riverbanks, and ceiba trees shivered under unseen breath. Shamans chronicled how her essence flowed through hummingbird wings and anaconda coils alike, binding every creature into one symphony of survival. These ancient tales, etched on stone and clay, portrayed Madremonte as a primal force responding to imbalance, a testament to the forest's fierce autonomy and enduring mystery. They believed that Madremonte's power waxed with the rainy season, when the Paramo clouds descended and rivers swelled, her influence grew, strengthening roots and washing away sickness. Offerings of maize, coca leaves, and chicha were made beneath moonlit palms to placate her spirit and ask for rains to nourish crops, but only if respect for the forest was upheld. Beyond ritual, the forest thrummed with her unseen presence, vines curled to form arched corridors, orchids bloomed in improbable shadows, and mist danced like white banners around sacred clearings. To glimpse her silhouette in a clearing at twilight was said to ensure safe passage and fertile harvests, to displease her invited relentless deluges that could drown entire fields. As settlers advanced into the lowland jungles in search of fertile ground, tractors and saws replaced the hunters' respectful axes, and Madremonte's temper flared with increasing severity. In the early 20th century, news spread of entire swaths of mahogany and cedar trees reduced to stumps overnight. Plantations along the Magdalena River found their fields flooded after heavy storms, while dozens of workers reported unexplainable tremors beneath their feet. Farmers spoke of spectral figures drifting through tea palm groves long after sundown, and duplexes of lightning that formed the shape of a woman standing tall among broken palms. Logging companies dismissed these stories as superstition until a survey crew vanished without a trace, their campsites found abandoned and half-buried beneath piles of branches. Rumors of Madremonte's wrath sowed fear among crew members, forcing many to abandon their contracts rather than tempt the spirit's retribution. Environmental reports would later note accelerated regrowth in those very areas, as if the forest were urged to reclaim every scar left by axes and plows. One notorious incident occurred near the foothills of Tolima, where a rancher's cattle staked out under a newly cleared pasture suddenly stampeded toward the forest's edge as thunder snarled overhead. When the storm subsided, all but a handful of cattle were gone, and the land bore gouges that resembled footprints too large for any known beast. Ranch hands who ventured after the herd were turned back by sudden downpours and swirling gusts that knocked them to the ground. Left in their place, they discovered distinctive lianas woven into crude lariats, lying coiled like serpents at the forest's border. These men returned home with stories of a sentinel looming in the canopy, her eyes glowing like embers in the darkness, compelling them to respect the lines they had crossed. In one village nestled on the banks of the Caqueta River, a young woman named Marisol defied local warnings to venture into the forest at twilight. She sought orchids for her mother's remedy, fearing the frailty of her ailing parent. As she knelt to gather blossoms beneath towering palms, the sky darkened suddenly, and the ground quaked beneath a gathering thunder. Blades of grass twisted into coils that barred her return path, and vines snaked silently across the forest floor. Sudden rains fell in drumming waves, and lightning framed the silhouette of a majestic woman standing atop a mossy boulder. Terrified, Marisol fell to her knees and cried for mercy. In that moment, the spirit approached, brushing back a tangle of hair like a living waterfall. Though her eyes sparked with the ferocity of a tempest, Madremonte offered Marisol the orchids untouched, urging her to heal but also warning her to protect every flower as sacred treasure. Marisol emerged with both relief and reverence, becoming a storyteller who passed this trial into legend. The villagers who witnessed the aftermath spoke of delicate orchid petals pressed into the soft earth as though placed by unseen hands, and footprints trailing from the pool where Marisol was sheltered. Her tale spread swiftly, cautioning harvesters to seek proper blessing and instilling humility in all who entered the green depths. Moved by such encounters, a covert council of forest guardians formed in various hamlets. Led by elders versed in Arhuaco tradition, they pledged to patrol sacred grounds, plant seedlings in storm-racked clearings, and record the ravages of illegal loggers. Don Luis, a retired ranger, fashioned talismans from braided palm fronds, inscribing them with symbols meant to curry favor with the spirit. Before sunrise, he placed these at the entrances to restricted groves, while his companion, Maria, conducted nightly vigils by lantern light. Playing flutes whose lilting notes were said to beckon Madremonte's attention. Over time, they noticed that areas protected by these rituals experienced fewer intensifying storms and saw a faster recovery of wildlife populations. Word of this harmony spread, drawing researchers and documentary teams eager to chronicle the alliance between humans and spirit. They carried journals filled with sketches of rare orchids and tracks of ocelots, each entry marking a living map of Madremonte's shifting realm. When research drones flew overhead, they sometimes malfunctioned near forest edges, their cameras capturing only glimpses of shifting foliage and spectral silhouettes before currents forced them to retreat. In time, some academic papers began to reference the Madremonte effect, a term describing how myth-inspired conservation could actually enhance biodiversity by fostering community stewardship. In one fateful season of drought, a group of mercury miners illegally dammed a tributary feeding a sacred wetland. They scoffed at warnings scrawled on palm boards and launched heavy machinery under the midday sun. That night, thunder crackled across a parched sky, and a violent storm tore through the camp, sending torrential rain spouting from riverbeds. Equipment was dislodged, campsites flooded, and several miners were carried away by swollen rapids. When survivors stumbled back to the nearest village, drenched and shaken, they swore they saw a towering silhouette drift over the churning waters, beckoning with one hand as if reclaiming the stolen flow. In the weeks that followed, the river's course realigned, creating pools that nurtured fish and amphibians once absent. The miners, chastened and fearful, dismantled their dams and joined locals in restoring the damaged banks, learning firsthand that defiance of Madremonte will carry consequences that no lawsuit could contest. Journal entries from a regional ecological survey record how fish species once threatened by habitat loss rebounded in those new pools, a testament to the spirit's restorative wrath. Today, Madremonte's trials resonate in law courts and academic halls far from the jungle. Environmental NGOs incorporate her legend into awareness campaigns, using evocative murals and animated short films to illustrate the precarious dynamic between growth and preservation. Teachers in riverside schools lead children on forest walks, pausing at ancient ceiba trees to recite chants believed to summon her watchful gaze. Hyperlocal radio broadcasts warn of deforestation risk and encourage farmers to adopt agroforestry, arguing that harmony with the land is the best way to earn her blessing. Meanwhile, seasonal storms still catch meteorologists by surprise, centering thunderheads above protected reserves while sparing adjacent cleared zones. These patterns fuel debate about the interplay of myth and meteorology, but for the people living within her reach, the message is clear: respecting Madremonte's domain ensures both safety and abundance. Through trials marked by wind and rain, the spirit continues to guide humanity toward a path where the forest thrives alongside human communities. In the 21st century, adventurers tracking biodiversity hotspots have reported phenomena that defy meteorological logic. Backpackers trekking the foothills of Los Nevados National Park speak of sudden squalls emerging without warning, enveloping their campsites in sheets of rain, only to vanish as swiftly as they appeared. Photographers capture intricate patterns of lichen-splattered bark illuminated by lightning that seems choreographed, and ornithologists note how bird calls fall silent before a low rumble, then resume as though in tribute. A French biologist examining amphibian populations recorded data loss on his laptop when an unexpected burst of static echoed through dense undergrowth, coinciding with a distant howl of wind. In all these accounts, the term Madremonte encounter passed quietly among seasoned field researchers. Their journals, filled with data tables and ecological assessments, often opened with a dedication to the spirit whose name acknowledges the delicate balance separating study from intrusion. Although digital instruments provide precise measures of humidity and barometric pressure, none can fully account for the abrupt shifts guided by some primal force that local guides still attribute to Madremonte's whim. Seminars at environmental conferences have featured maps of these anomalies, overlaying storm tracks with zones of intact forest cover, sparking discussion about whether the spirit's legend might correlate with ecological resilience. Recognizing the power of narrative, regional governments in Antioquia and Chaco have begun to enshrine Madremonte's principle of reciprocity into forest management regulations. New legislation, informally dubbed the Madremonte Clause, mandates community-led conservation districts where locals collaboratively monitor wildlife corridors and sustainable harvest zones. Under these guidelines, permits for resource extraction require ceremonial offerings and the accompaniment of a certified spiritual steward versed in indigenous protocols. Failure to comply invites fines and mandatory reparation through reforestation projects. Local council meetings often open with stories honoring Madremonte's wrath and mercy, reinforcing the idea that legal frameworks without cultural respect are incomplete. Educators and legal scholars praise this model as a pioneering fusion of customary lore and modern policy, arguing that inviting a guardian spirit into statute strengthens both compliance rates and ecological outcomes. As rivers run clearer and wildlife corridors reconnect, the legend of the storm spirit becomes more than myth, it transforms into living legislation safeguarding Colombia's natural heritage. Conservation NGOs from abroad have partnered with community leaders to facilitate workshops on traditional chants and rainmaking dances, ensuring that Madremonte's voice continues to resonate in digital and spoken forms alike. Even so, Madremonte's messages remain capricious at times. Rare but dramatic storm events occasionally strike zones of unexpected calm, uprooting invasive plantations and recharging parched wetlands. In 2019, drought-stricken coffee growers in Tolima experienced a sudden cloudburst so intense that it delivered more rain in an hour than their region typically received in a week. While meteorologists identified a converging front, local farmers credited the looming figure seen atop a ridgeline, arms raised as though summoning relief. They rebuilt terraces with stone retaining walls and replanted native shade trees, integrating both modern agronomy and ancestral blessing rituals. Farm cooperatives now celebrate an annual Rain for the Jungle Festival, honoring Madremonte with parades and storm-chasing treks. Tourists flock to witness these ceremonies, blending academic studies of climate resilience with immersive cultural experiences. Here, thunder and dance merge, reminding attendees that nature's cycles are rhythms to be respected and revered. By sharing these tales via social media and travel blogs, artists and eco-influencers keep the spirit's warnings alive, helping communities adapt more quickly to changing weather patterns. This fusion of ancient myth and contemporary storytelling underscores how intangible heritage can inform tangible environmental strategies. Guided by the legend, Ecomadre Expeditions offers responsibly curated treks through borderlands once considered too treacherous, framing each trail as a pilgrimage to Madremonte's sacred domains. Visitors learn permaculture techniques under the tutelage of local farmers and hear songs of the forest sung by Kogi choir members at dusk. Campsites are built on raised platforms away from natural waterways, ensuring streams remain unobstructed for amphibian migrations, and meals rely exclusively on foraged fruits and sustainably harvested cacao. As muffled thunder carries through the trees, expedition leaders invite guests to pause in silence, listening for the heartbeat of the forest. At night, lanterns reveal ghostly figures in raindrops, and fireflies flit in choreographed patterns that locals liken to Madremonte's gentle smile. By weaving myth into each itinerary, Ecomadre Expeditions demonstrates that respectful tourism can celebrate folklore without commodifying it, binding economic opportunity to stewardship of the living landscape. Feedback from participants often mentions a palpable empathy for the forest, and many extend their stays to join reforestation drives or apprentice with traditional weavers who craft offerings from palm fibers. As twilight settles over Colombia's vast green tapestry, the echoes of thunder carry faint lullabies sung by a guardian spirit whose story is far from over. Scientists track shifting weather patterns caused by climate change and marvel at how zones influenced by Madremonte's storms maintain higher humidity levels and richer biodiversity. School children compose new verses for her legend, adapting it to a world facing global warming and habitat loss. Environmentalists see in her legend an archetype for planetary stewardship, a reminder that every ecosystem, like every myth, demands respect and vigilance. Whether Madremonte is a metaphoric embodiment of the forest's resilience or a real spirit animating each gust and downpour, her presence unites communities across generations. In her storms, we find both warning and hope, for a world that listens to the voices of nature can endure far beyond the darkest clouds. May this story inspire all who hear it to honor the bonds between humanity and the wild, standing as vigilant stewards for countless generations to come. Communities, scientists, and travelers alike keep vigil for signs that guide our actions: a flashing branch, a sudden gust, a distant rumble, each serving as an invitation to walk alongside Madremonte in fostering a future where storms heal rather than harm. As the green corridors of Colombia hum with life under canopies older than memory, the legend of the Madremonte stands as a timeless reminder that nature is neither passive nor predictable. Through centuries, this storm-wielding guardian has taught humankind that every fallen branch, every drop of rain, and every shadow cast by lightning matters in the grand tapestry of the wild. Her presence, felt in sudden squalls, whispered in village chants, and revered in ceremonial offerings, bridges the ancient world of indigenous wisdom with modern efforts in conservation and sustainable development. Today, when maps are overlaid with biodiversity hotspots and environmental impact assessments, Madremonte's story emerges as both cultural heritage and living science, guiding laws, educational programs, and eco-friendly ventures. May this tale inspire us to approach the earth with humility and reciprocity, to honor the unseen forces that shape our world, and to remember that in every echo of thunder, the spirit of the forest still watches, urging us toward balance and renewal. Let each decision we make, from planting a sapling to crafting our cities, be guided by the symphony of storms and leaves that Madremonte plays across Colombia's living cathedral. In the heart of Argentina's vast pampas, where golden grasses sway beneath an endless sky, the legend of the Silver River has woven itself into the fabric of time. For countless generations, gauchos and villagers gathered under the stars to share tales of this luminous ribbon stretching from horizon to horizon, a celestial waterway flowing high above the earth. They say it is the Milky Way's mortal reflection, a path forged by divine forces to link the world of humans with the realm of the gods. On quiet nights, travelers following the Rio de la Plata's winding course pause to gaze aloft as the luminescent streak above mirrors their course below, reminding each soul of a love so fierce that even heaven could not restrain its surge. At the heart of this enduring myth lie two star-crossed lovers whose devotion challenged the boundary between earth and sky. United by a vow whispered beside the earthly river's gentle rush, Hilaria and Tomas swore to join their fates beyond the veil of mortality. But when the celestial river opened between their worlds, their joined hands were torn apart. This single act of heartbreak birthed the Silver River itself, a permanent barrier of shimmering light that split lovers, friends, and kin across the ages. Even now, the wind carries a distant melody along its banks, a mournful song that recalls promises broken and yearning hearts left behind. Visitors to the southern skies on clear winter evenings slow their breath as the river's silver glow ignites dreams of reunion amid the cosmic expanse, a reminder that longing can carve legends as enduring as the stars themselves. In the beginning, before the dawn of mortal kingdoms and before any footfall touched the soft pampa grass, the cosmos sang a song of creation that echoed across the void. From that melody emerged the Silver River, birthed by a convergence of cosmic energies and divine yearning. It was said that Solano, the sun god, poured his first light into a ribbon of liquid silver, granting it life as it spiraled down into the night sky. Each droplet carried the warmth of dawn and the cool hush of midnight, weaving together day and night into a single tapestry of luminescence. The river shimmered with 1,000 hues of moonlight and starlight, its currents carrying the promise of unity between heaven and earth. As it took shape, the silver river traced invisible paths through the heavens before settling into a majestic arch above the vast Argentine plains. Elder shamans spoke of the moment when the river first appeared, a luminous bridge uniting distant realms. The air trembled with power, and the earth itself bowed to the river's radiance. Scholars in hidden desert temples recorded visions of ancestors stepping across its glowing banks, trembling with awe at the prospect of a journey beyond the stars. From that day forward, mortals gazed upward, tracing the river's winding path and feeling the tug of something vast and eternal. The celestial river became a map of hope, guiding fishermen on moonlit lagoons and farmers who measured seasons by its shifting glow. Ochre-hued clay tablets uncovered near old ruins told of star scribes who recorded the river's ever-changing courses, claiming it reflected the fate of kings and common folk alike. According to one fragile tablet, the river's glow would flare in times of triumph and dim in moments of heartbreak, like a cosmic heart beating with mortal emotion. Travelers noted that on nights when the river shone most brilliantly, omens of birth and renewal followed, while faint whispers along its banks heralded storms of sorrow or loss. In villages scattered beneath its watchful glare, artisans sculpted riverine deities with arms outstretched, pleading for passage to realms unseen. Chanting rose in ceremonies beneath its course, voices weaving together in harmony with the river's eternal current. Even the fiercest warriors would lay down their spear at the sight of its radiant flow, humbled by the vision of something greater than destruction or conquest. Thus, from the wellspring of celestial music to the hands of storytellers in remote outposts, the Silver River carried tales of origin and wonder, a narrative as fluid and boundless as the river itself. Legends whisper that the Silver River chose its course with deliberate grace, deciding where to weave its silvery presence according to the rhythms of earth and sky. It began by tracing the Rio de la Plata's winding channel as if to honor the river's mortal twin, then curved southward to dance above the windswept pampas, where windmills turned in silent salute. In some versions of the myth, the river drifted north through dense subtropical jungles, brushing treetops and igniting bioluminescent flowers with its touch. Travelers spoke of nights when phosphorescent blooms would carpet hidden trails in soft light at the river's command. Pilgrims made arduous journeys from mountain villages, following whispered rumors of its brightest arc, seeking healing or transcendence at specific skyward crossings. Priests and priestesses constructed open-air temples where offerings of silver trinkets and woven cloths were laid beside flickering braziers. They believed that guardians moved along the river's banks, invisible yet ever-present spirits whose voices sounded like whispered miracles in the night wind. Among these celestial custodians, twin siblings Micah and Uran stood apart, charged with preserving the river's harmony. Micah was said to wear robes spun from starlight, her laughter like tinkling crystal, while Uran cast gentle shadows that cooled the river's shimmering heat. Together they taught mortals to listen when the river spoke, to read its silent currents like a sacred text. Their bond, unbroken even by time's passage, became a parable for devotion that could transcend the boundaries of existence itself. Over centuries, the worship of Micah and Uran waned in distant regions but never disappeared from the hearts of those who felt the river's call. Shrine keepers passed down intricate carvings of the twins embracing over the river's mouth, symbolizing the unity of dual forces. In the flicker of candlelight inside these sanctuaries, one could almost hear the dead murmuring their gratitude for a cosmic bond that offered both solace and challenge. As ages passed and empires rose and crumbled beneath its luminous gaze, the Silver River became more than a bridge between worlds, it became a sacred test of devotion and endurance. Poets composed epic verses that compared mortal love to the river's ceaseless flow, praising hearts that braved its distance. Kings commissioned astronomers to chart its every shimmer, believing the pattern of its light could reveal strategies for conquest or counsel on governance. In humble villages, lovers carved initials into nearby trees, pledging their loyalty under the watchful stream, only to return years later and find the carvings faded by time and weather. Under a canopy of ancient baobab trees in a small village on the edge of Nigeria's savannah, the sun washed the red soil in golden rays while a hush fell over the birds that perched on weathered branches. From the stillness, one curious tortoise emerged, a creature whose rough carapace bore the scars of age and whose eyes carried the weight of dreams. He watched the birds with quiet longing, marveling at the freedom in every wing beat and the songs that soared above the rustling grasses. Islanders told of a sky feast held once a season, when the heavens opened and a table heavy with fruits, grains, and honeyed treats appeared for those whose hearts were pure. The tortoise, driven by envy and a spark of daring cunning, resolved to claim a seat among the clouds. Without feathers or flight, he devised a plan to borrow the wings of his feathered neighbors. By painting a hollow gourd to look like a royal invitation, inscribed with gilded symbols of peace and promise, he would persuade the birds to carry him high. His mind replayed the elders' tales of birds who carried messages between gods and mortals and returned bearing blessings. He remembered the crackle of wood smoke from nightly council fires and the shimmering dance of fireflies that accompanied the stories, as though the forest itself listened in rapture. With that memory pulsing in his mind, the tortoise felt both awe and resolve swell in his chest. He began beneath a cluster of palm fronds, greeting the diminutive weaverbirds as they stitched leaves into nests. His tone honored their industrious art, praising the shimmer of dawn on each stalk. From there he moved to where the parrots clustered in riotous color, praising their wisdom and hinting that only the brightest plumage could bear a message to the gods. Even the tiny sunbirds, flitting like colored gems, found their allure extolled. With each whispered compliment and carefully weighed pause, the tortoise sowed seeds of intrigue and obligation. By midday, one by one, the birds agreed to lend him their feathers, 3 from each, they chirped with polite concern. They fastened long plumes to the gourd as he balanced inside, trusting that the promise it carried was as solid as his shell. As the last feather snapped into place, an expectant hush fell. Wings beat, lifting wood and stone, vine and berry, and the tortoise felt a thrill course through him. Upward they rose, leaving behind the scent of loamy earth, climbing toward the clouds and the promise of feasting among the skyward spirits. At the edge of the village's dusty clearing, the tortoise stood under the sprawling limbs of an ancient irako tree, eyeing the flocks that gathered on its branches like living jewels. He had spent many seasons watching the birds prepare for the annual sky feast, listening to their chatter and laughing at the flash of their dew-kissed feathers in the morning light. That feast, passed down through generations as a time when the earth and the sky celebrated together, remained a mystery to him, a tapestry of golden fruits, steamed grains, and honey cakes laid out upon clouds heavy with promise. Each year, the birds carved out a place for themselves at the edge of the heavens, lifting their sinewy wings to ascend through shafts of sunshine and drift among the clouds. The tortoise felt a pang in his heart, a yearning to taste the sweet offerings and partake in the ephemeral joy that seemed made just for feathered creatures. But he knew he would never reach those altitudes without help. As twilight painted the sky in pink and amber, he resolved to weave a cunning plan, one that would require flattery, craft, and the trusting power of promises whispered just so. His mind replayed the elders' tales, of birds who carried messages between gods and mortals and returned bearing blessings. He remembered the crackle of wood smoke from nightly council fires and the shimmering dance of fireflies that accompanied the stories, as though the forest itself listened in rapture. With that memory pulsing in his mind, the tortoise felt both awe and resolve swell in his chest. Early the next morning, the tortoise made his way to the weaver-birds' nests, where the tiny craftsmen wove strands of grass into bulbous pots that swung like lanterns in the breeze. He greeted them with a respectful nod and soft words, praising the strength of their tiny beaks and the harmony of their construction. "O brilliant architects of the trees," he began, his voice warm and deliberate, "you who stitch blades of grass into sanctuaries for your young, I come bearing news of a gathering that will shine brightest under your skilled handiwork." The weaver-birds cocked their heads, chirping with curiosity. When he revealed a small piece of golden cloth embroidered with symbols of peace and plenty, they peered closer, their eyes bright with wonder. "We have been invited to the feast of the sky," he proclaimed, as they chirped excitedly at the thought. "Will you lend your feathers to bear my message above the canopy?" He cradled the feathers carefully, each one a token of the trust he sought to command. As the sun climbed high, he set off toward the palm grove, ready to charm the next group of birds with his silken words. Under the sprawling fronds of a grove of palm trees, the tortoise paused to address the parrots, creatures whose emerald and crimson feathers glowed like burnished gemstones. Their calls echoed through the air in beautiful patterns, and their bright eyes missed nothing. The tortoise bowed low, presenting a small carved gourd that gleamed in the dappled sunlight. "Honored keepers of the rainbow wings," he intoned, "your brilliance is sung by every creature, and your wisdom flows deeper than the rivers that carve our land. You have been singled out for a special honor, to deliver an invitation to the feast of the sky, where the gifts of nature will be laid bare for all who ascend." The parrots squawked among themselves, impressed by his eloquence and the fine detail etched around the gourd's rim. Satisfied, they agreed to pluck plumes for the tortoise. Mission, each of them selecting feathers of the brightest hues. With a flourish worthy of their own grand barbs, he accepted their gift, pressing his scaly cheek in gratitude before moving on toward the eagle's rocky outcrop. As twilight approached, spilling streaks of gold and rose across the sky, the tortoise found refuge by the riverbank. There, he mixed fine sands and crushed ochre pigments with resin to paint the gourd, inscribing it with symbols he had observed among the elders, signs of peace, unity, and heavenly favor. Feather by careful feather, he pressed the bird's gifts into the surface, creating a winged mosaic that seemed destined to hover between earth and sky. The painting glowed by firelight, each line and curve illuminated by the dance of embers, and the tortoise felt a surge of triumph. He had woven a promise made of color and word, a canvas that called out to the sky itself. Nearby, the meadowgrass swayed in a gentle breeze, as though applauding the artistry. Finally, with his plan complete, he rolled the decorated gourd beneath the ancient irako tree and waited, heart thundering, for the arrival of the post he had summoned. Before dawn, a murmuring chorus announced the arrival of each species recruited for the journey. First came the weaver birds, then the sunbirds with their iridescent throats, and finally a squadron led by a proud eagle, whose golden eyes pierced the first light. The tortoise opened the gourd and stepped inside, feeling soft moss cushioning his shell. The birds gathered around, securing their feathers into bundles affixed by vine knots and resin. As the last ribbon of vine tightened, the tortoise took a steadying breath, remembering the stories of mortals who dared claim the sky. Then, in unison, the birds launched into the air, lifting vines and feather bundles high. Roots and earth slipped away, replaced by the crisp scent of clouds. Heart hammering, the tortoise looked down and felt the world unfold below him, a tapestry of green and brown, dotted with villages and waterways, while above lay the promise of the feast he had coveted. High above the earthen realm, where the pillars of cloud drifted like ivory plumes against the azure firmament, the sky feast unfolded in all its splendor. Broad, mist-soft tables bore pyramid stacks of ripe mangoes, bowls of jollof rice spiced with crimson peppers, and platters of roasted guinea fowl seasoned with fragrant lemongrass. Vines of wild honey dripped amber droplets onto pounded yam balls, while clusters of sabalo flowers added a tart counterpoint. A gentle zephyr carried the scent of sun-baked earth and distant rain, infusing the feast with the essence of home. Birds of every hue hovered and alighted around the dining tables, their laughter echoing like wind chimes in a cathedral of air. They greeted one another with excited chirps, their songs weaving a tapestry of joy that rose and fell in harmonious cascades. In the center of it all, nestled on a cloud cushion, was the tortoise, his shell newly polished and his heart brimming with anticipation. He reached out with slow, deliberate motions, eager to partake in the bounty before him. At first, the birds welcomed him warmly, fluttering to adjust the gourd-framed nest that cradled his body. A regal hoopoe, its crest fanned like a crown, offered him a bowl of palm nut soup, nodding respectfully at the gourd's golden insignias. Nearby, a chorus of sunbirds lined up to serve slices of melon glazed in fresh dewdrops, giggling at their own reflection in the tortoise's glossy shell. The tortoise thanked each bird with courteous nods, his voice resonating over the soft hiss of cloud beneath them. As he savored the sweet tang of melon and the warm richness of yam, his eyes gleamed with delight. He tapped the table 3 times, a signal he remembered from an elder's tale, and a flock of pigeons descended with trays of meatballs seasoned by distant forests. Each morsel was a revelation, earthy, sharp, or sweet in turn, as though the feast itself were a map to the land below. The birds watched him with approving chirps, pleased that their guest appeared at ease among them. Between courses, the tortoise engaged his hosts in learned conversation, steering talk toward the deeper meanings of the gathering. He spoke of balance, of sky and earth, of feathers and shell, of the harmony that bound all living things together. The birds nodded thoughtfully, their heads bobbing in accord. A pair of doves cooed softly, recalling the lore that the first sky feast was a gift from the goddess Nana to reward cooperation among creatures. The tortoise interjected quietly, commending their ancestors' wisdom while subtly planting the notion that even loftier honors awaited those who showed unwavering generosity. He raised a shell-carved drinking cup to his lips and toasted the sky, to unity across every winged heart, and to the grand feast that awaits us in seasons to come. The birds echoed his sentiment with a burst of melodic calls that rippled across the clouds. As they returned to dining, the tortoise bided his time, savoring each taste and cushioning his ambition behind polite smiles. As the feast drew to a leisurely close, the tortoise's appetite grew bolder. While the birds sipped on spiced hibiscus tea and traded stories under the wash of twilight blue cloud, he leaned forward and requested another helping of neeb stew, the kind that simmered hours over flame, perfumed with onion and thyme. The hoopoe hesitated, its feathers bristling with unease, then gestured toward the heaping platter still laid on the table. Feeling the weight of his cunning plan, the tortoise added, "Surely those who invited me would not begrudge me my share, especially after helping to bear this gourd to the sky." At once, the birds looked at each other, unsettled by the implication that their hospitality might be taken for granted. The tortoise's tone slipped from cordial to confident, and his eyes held the glint of one who believed he had earned original, and extra, rights. A hush fell, broken only by the soft drip of lingering honey droplets from vine-adorned bowls. The gathering's harmony fractured in an instant. Wings rustled in offended clamor as the birds realized their goodwill had been twisted. The eagle, voice low like distant thunder, spoke first. "You have used our feathers and the faith we placed in you for your own gain." The dove's gentle coo turned firm, and the sunbird's chirps rose into sharp crescendos of indignation. Realizing that his deceit had been uncovered, the tortoise scrambled for words, but his shell felt heavy with betrayal. In a swift decision, the birds lashed his gourd-bound cradle with braided vines, suspending him beneath the banquet tables. His pleas for mercy were carried away on the breeze, unheard above the birds' storm of voices as they prepared to rectify the wrong. The tortoise watched helplessly as the cloud tables above blurred into a world of wings and feathers, a world from which he was on the brink of being unceremoniously cast. In that moment, the tortoise's heart pounded with both fear and regret. He recalled the elder's words, that trust was a bond stronger than any chain and kindness a refuge more secure than any fortress. He had strayed far beyond a simple desire for belonging. Now he faced consequences that soared as high as his earlier triumph, and he knew there would be no guiding hands once the clouds broke. With each tightening twist of vine, a single thought pulsed through his mind: the shell he had polished with pride would not shield him from the fall that awaited. As the birds hovered above, ready to send him spinning back toward the earth, a hush descended, a silence filled with sorrow and the weight of broken promises. It was a quiet harsher than any storm. As the tethered vines slipped from the cloud's bosom, the tortoise felt his world shift into freefall. At first, the descent was accompanied by a sense of weightlessness, a fleeting reminder of the triumph he had sought. But the breeze quickly grew fierce, whistling past his ears with the urgency of 1,000 storms. He twisted inside the gourd cradle, attempting in vain to slow his downward momentum, but the bundle of feathers could not contend with the relentless pull of gravity. Below, the vast canopy of trees stretched like a living carpet, leaves trembling as they reached higher and higher. Above, the birds circled in sorrowful silence, their earlier anger mingled with regret. He could hear the distant thunder of wings as they hesitated. Some called out his name in soft chirps, but the winds carried their words away. A trickle of panic surged through him, flooding every scale. What had once seemed a gleaming path to glory now unfurled into a vertiginous chasm between sky and earth. The tortoise's mind raced, replaying each moment of flattery and rising hope that had led him here. He recalled the weaver-bird's gentle trust as they fastened whip-stitch patterns of feathers, the parrot's bright eyes as they pecked out plumes in generosity, and the solemn nod of the eagle that had bound him near the feast tables. His heart pounded as realization dawned. In placing his own ambition above the bonds of trust, he had torn a tapestry woven by countless acts of goodwill. The carved gourd, once gleaming with promise, loosened its hold on him, and in that instant, the tortoise's shell, the core of his identity, began to crack against the rib of a broken feather. Pain flared as sharp shards pressed against his carapace, fragments scattering like fallen stars around him. He squeezed his eyes shut, bracing for impact, heartbeat hammering like a mortar drum. Then came the crash, a thunderous impact that reverberated through the soil and rattled loose pebbles across the forest floor. The tortoise's cradle shattered against a mighty baobab root, sending splinters and feathers spiraling into the air. For a moment, everything was still. The clouds parted just enough to reveal a single shaft of light that glinted off broken shell fragments. The birds alighted nearby, their wings stirring petals and dust in slow, mournful swirls. The eagle lowered its vast wings and hovered above, its eyes both fierce and sorrowful. Below, The tortoise lay trembling, each breath a testament to the fragility of hope when built on deceit. He tried to speak, but his voice cracked like the gourd that had carried him. Each fragment of his broken shell stung as it dug into the earth, a stark reminder that promises, once shattered, cannot be glued back by words alone. Then, in an act that surprised his bleeding pride, the birds moved forward, not in judgment, but in mourning. The hoopoe offered a salute with its crest lowered, and the doves cooed a soft lament. A bright sunbird fluttered down, placing a tender feather atop the tortoise's bent leg, as though to soothe his pain. The eagle's voice rumbled, "Your heart might yet learn what your mind grasped too late. Trust blooms through truth, not by trickery." Slowly, the birds dismantled the ribbons of shattered vine, freeing the tortoise from his tangled perch. Though his shell lay broken at their feet, they did not abandon him. Instead, they untied the last feathers from the gourd and gathered around him in a living circle, each bearing a wing to shelter him from wind and sun. In that circle, the tortoise felt a surge of humility and gratitude, the weight of his actions pressing as firmly as his battered shell. When he finally rose, shell now cracked beyond repair, the tortoise understood that the greatest feast was not the one laid upon the clouds but the gift of forgiveness and loyalty. The birds guided him below the canopy, where the earth welcomed him in kind, soft grasses cushioned each step, and dappled sunlight guided his path toward a quiet pool of water. As he lapped at the cool reflection, he glimpsed his own broken reflection and vowed to honor every promise from that day forward. His journey back to the village was slow and careful, each step a testament to newfound wisdom. And though his shell would bear the scars of pride and deceit for the rest of his days, the tales of his fall, and the mercy shown by his winged friends, echoed across every lagoon and plateau of the savannah. In the years that followed, both creatures and ancestors spoke of a tortoise who learned that trust, once earned, must be guarded with honesty or risk shattering like broken gourd on unforgiving earth. In the aftermath of his skyward journey, the tortoise returned to earth humbled, his cracked shell a living testament to the cost of deceit. Word of his flight and fall traveled on the wind, carried by both birds and villagers, becoming a timeless tale woven into the fabric of the land. Elders recounted the story beside evening fires, reminding young and old alike that ambition rooted in artifice will crumble when trust takes wing. Yet within the tortoise's scars lay the seeds of a richer wisdom, that kindness offered and promises kept forge bonds stronger than any feathered lift. From that season onward, he shared tales of the sky feast not to boast, but to teach. Birds and tortoises alike learned to honor honesty over cunning, recognizing that the spirit of any gathering, be it on earth or among the clouds, thrives when every guest carries integrity. In time, the torn ribbons of falsehood were forgotten, replaced by the enduring grace of mutual respect. And so, when the next sky feast arrived, those who gathered did so with hearts open and pledges unbroken, their echoes of song rising truthful as the dawn. Beneath a cobalt sky brushed with streaks of drifting clouds, the rolling hills of ancient Greece swelled with golden grasses stirred by a gentle breeze. Along one narrow path carved through sun-baked earth, an ant marched steadily, each tiny footstep driven by a singular purpose, gathering precious grains of wheat. From dawn's first light, she toiled without complaint, her antennae quivering with resolve as she carried one kernel after another into the safety of her hidden chamber. Nearby, on a flat rock warmed by the afternoon sun, a grasshopper lounged in carefree delight. With a slender body dressed in vibrant green, he tapped his legs like strings on a harp, filling the meadows with a cheerful tune. The joyous cadence of his song drifted over to the ant, who paused, antennae raised. Despite his inviting melody, she offered only a polite nod before returning to her labor. For she knew well that summer's bounty is fleeting. Each day in the height of the season was a gift of warmth and abundance, but behind the verdant cover lay the promise of a harsh winter. The ant's heart carried gratitude for the sunlight on her back and gratitude for the earth's generosity, tempered by foresight. She understood that hope alone could not fill her nest when frost claimed the fields. So she stored every grain, mindful of the time when the grass would lie dormant, and when her careful preparation would stand between security and hunger. While the grasshopper sang, never once did he consider tomorrow's need. Yet the rhythms of life in the countryside demanded equal measures of song and provision. This is the story of how diligence and harmony found their balance, and how a choice made in summer's glow could shape the bonds of friendship in winter's chill. The fields around the ant's nest shimmered like liquid gold as the midday sun rose high in the sky. Patches of wild oregano released their earthy aroma, and bees hummed around purple blooms. From within her bustling colony, the ant emerged on her daily mission, to collect grains of wheat, fallen figs, and the last rosy olives still clinging to low branches. Each kernel she selected was measured by instinct, her tiny jaws gripping firmly enough to carry them back to her chamber but lightly enough to navigate the winding tunnels through the hillside. Her world was one of steady purpose, measured in grain stored, shadows counted for midday breaks, and the rhythm of gravel beneath her feet. Across the meadow, the grasshopper's song rose and fell with playful energy. He leapt between stalks of barley, his hind legs propelling him high into the air. With each bound, he imagined himself a hero of the great theater of life, unrivaled in skill and spirit. He plucked the sun's warmth into his music and wove it into melodies that echoed among the olive groves. His wings responded to every emotional note, shimmering like stained glass in bright daylight. When he paused to rest, he'd offer the ant a friendly greeting. "You should join me in song, friend," he'd say, "for the world is meant for dancing, not drudgery." The ant paused only to raise her antennae at his invitation, then returned to her loads without a word. In those brief moments of silence, her mind weighed the seasons to come. She thought of the pale fields under winter's frost, where grains would be buried beneath snow and the wind would howl like a distant storm. She knew that by the time the grasshopper's tune had faded, she would still have her stores. Perhaps then she would be kind and share, but only if he asked in humility and recognized the value of the work she had done. As the sun began its descent toward the horizon, the ant made one last round through the field. Hours earlier, the grasshopper had offered to teach her a new chord he mastered on his wings, but she declined, promising another day. "I can't linger while the stores go bare," she replied with a gentle firmness. Although his music called to her like a siren, she could not ignore the pull of tomorrow's need. The grasshopper watched as she vanished into her burrow, the day's end framing her silhouette in a soft glow. His heart stirred with a pang of uncertainty beneath his carefree exterior, an uncertainty he chose to ignore with another triumphant song. As summer ripened into autumn, the air carried a cooler bite, and the grasshopper noticed the rhythms around him shifting. Leaves on the fig trees turned bronze and fell beneath the groves, and the once lush barley fields bent low under the weight of ripened heads. Yet he still preferred the ease of his music to the strain of preparation. He played beneath gnarled olive trunks and among hills glazed in honeyed light. Each evening, dew settled on the grass, and he'd pause to enjoy the crystalline drops on his wings, thinking them more precious than any grain he never gathered. The ant's nest, by contrast, had grown crowded with food. Within its cool tunnels, the gathered olives glistened in neat rows, and the figs were stacked like amber jewels on low ledges. The ant moved among her kin, organizing stores, checking for spoilage, and ensuring every chamber held its fair share. Their voices formed a quiet chorus of purpose, a testament to collective perseverance. In that subterranean world, the future felt secure. If winter came, they would meet it with readiness, each ant playing her part. One crisp morning, a crack sounded at the mouth of the nest, a sign that the ground above had begun to harden with frost. The grasshopper, hearing the crack, hopped to the entrance, his curiosity piqued. He peered in to see the ant family at work, marveling at the discipline on display. "You have enough to last 3 winters," he called softly, half in jest, half in awe. The ant nodded kindly, stepping forward to say, "Perhaps more than 3, if we're careful." Instead of humility, the grasshopper felt a swelling pride. "Your life must be dull," he said, brushing frost from his antennae. "You miss the music, the dance, the wonder of each bright day." He tapped his leg in a soft trill, asking for a duet. The ant's eyes reflected understanding and sadness. She knew the grasshopper's heart was free but unprepared. "I cannot," she said at last. "Music without enough for tomorrow is a hunger that will silence even the sweetest tune." With those words, she withdrew into her nest, closing the entrance behind her. The grasshopper returned to the open field, feeling the first real chill in his bones. Without stores or a plan, he realized that while he could sing to the stars, his song would not fill an empty belly, nor warm him against winter's breath. Yet he resolved to trust in the warmth of friendship and the lessons he'd soon learn. When winter came, it arrived without warning, a sudden cloak of white that hushed the fields and stilled the rivers. The grasshopper's music halted as he scanned the barren landscape in despair. Ice glazed the stones and grass, and no drop of dew nor leaf of grass remained for him to sustain his play. Shivering and alone, he regretted each note he preferred over grains left uncollected. Desperate, he made his way back to the ant's hillside. His legs trembled more from cold than the climb itself. At the entrance, he nerved himself to knock. Within, the air was warmer, and the scent of dry olives and stored figs drifted through the tunnels. The ant appeared at the mouth, her mandibles soft with surprise. The grasshopper's voice cracked as he spoke, "I have nothing to eat, friend. May I share your store for just a night?" The ant regarded him for a heartbeat longer than kindness alone might allow. In her heart, she remembered the melody he once offered, a gift of beauty she'd denied. She also remembered how her foresight preserved her colony. She saw regret shining in his compound eyes. At last, she nodded. "You may have shelter and share our food. But you must promise 2 things, that you will listen when winter ends, and that you will work alongside us when summer returns." Relief washed over the grasshopper in a single exhalation. He entered the nest, and for the first time, tasted the richness of combined effort and sharing. Each fig and olive warmed his spirit as much as his body. Around him, the ants moved with calm purpose. He realized perseverance and planning were not burdens, but gifts enabling resilience. In that moment, a new harmony was born, one measured in rhythm and provision alike. When spring's thaw finally arrived, the grasshopper emerged, no longer driven solely by music, but by gratitude and newfound responsibility. He joined the ant at dawn's first light, gathering grains and storing figs. Together, they worked in unison, a lesson etched in frost now guiding their days. And the grasshopper's melody, once carefree and fleeting, gained depth. It celebrated not only the joy of the moment, but the promise of tomorrow. Their friendship, forged by compassion and tempered by perseverance, became the greatest song of all. When the first blossoms of spring colored the hillside, the ant and the grasshopper stood side by side beneath a sky newly bright with promise. No longer were they bound by the simple roles of laborer and idler, for each had learned from the other. The ant discovered the joy that music and laughter could bring, while the grasshopper embraced the value of foresight and shared responsibility. Their collaboration transformed the once quiet burrow into a place where diligence met delight, and where every melody held the steady pulse of purpose. In time, their story spread through the olive groves and barley fields, carried by traveling merchants and whispered under starry skies. Across generations, it became a timeless reminder that effort and enjoyment need not be at odds, but can harmonize to forge paths of resilience, friendship, and mutual respect. May this retelling endure as a guide, that a life balanced by both work and wonder leads to harvests far richer than either alone could yield, and that kindness extended to those in need transforms hardship into shared hope and harmony. Alumide rose before sunrise, the scent of dew on millet and yam fields filling his lungs as he tied the worn leather laces of his sandals. In his small thatched hut at the edge of Udo village, candlelight danced across the wooden walls, illuminating a simple clay pot of porridge his wife had prepared. He ate silently, savoring every spoonful, mindful that his honesty had earned him the trust of neighbors and traders from distant towns. No one in the region had ever known Alumide to bend the truth. When his neighbors bartered for yams or goats, they did so without worry that the farmer would cheat them. School children and elders alike would visit his stall at market simply to hear his gentle voice and appreciate that his words were as steady as the river that carved the valley. News of his integrity drifted through kingdoms beyond Udo, eventually reaching the palace of King Adebola. In the royal court, murmurs of a man whose honesty was said to be perfect intrigued courtiers and advisors, for they believed absolute truth was impossible. That belief piqued the king's pride and curiosity. He summoned Alumide to test whether such virtue could withstand royal cunning. Heart pounding with equal parts fear and resolve, Alumide swept aside his mat, offered prayers to the ancestors, and stepped into the first light of dawn. He carried nothing but a woven basket of yams and a calm confidence built over decades of speaking only what he knew to be true. The path ahead would lead him from familiar fields into the heart of splendor and peril, where honesty alone would be his shield. Alumide's journey began on a narrow track that cut through waving millet fields and clusters of baobab trees. Birds erupted in flocks at his approach, startled by the sound of his footsteps on sun-warmed earth. He walked slowly, recalling every moment of his life where speaking the truth had steered him through conflict, the time he guided lost travelers by naming the exact bend in the river, the day he admitted to a merchant that he'd miscounted coins and promptly returned the extra. As a boy, he'd witnessed lies bring ruin to families. As a man, he'd seen honesty restore trust and community. Now, each memory filled him with a quiet courage that battled any pang of doubt. Midway along the road, the royal messenger appeared, an ebony-skinned youth clutching a scroll sealed in crimson wax. The boy knelt, extending the message embroidered in gold ink, Alumide of Udo, come before King Adebola at first light. Speak your truth, or face the consequences of silence. Heart thudding, the farmer accepted the mandate without complaint. He knelt to the messenger, bowed his head to the earth, and rose again, aware that many had refused the king's summons and never returned. Behind him, the village boundary faded, replaced by orchards tended in straight lines and well-guarded stables. Guards in gleaming helms challenged him at each checkpoint, but he answered each question simply, "I am Alumide, the farmer of Udo," and they let him pass. At last, he stepped through the carved wooden gates of the palace, his sandals silent on marble floors polished to a mirror sheen. Courtiers in vibrant silk robes watched him with concealed smiles or furrowed brows. The air was cool with the spray from a marble fountain at the center of the courtyard, where white lotus blossoms drifted atop clear water. Throne chambers loomed ahead, and Alumide's resolve held firm. He was a man known for speaking only truth, and now that same truth would carry him into the gilded lair of power itself. King Adebola reclined on a raised dais beneath a canopy of crimson velvet, the glow of torches casting shifting shadows on his stern face. Around him sat courtiers with jeweled necklaces and silken turbans, eyes bright with anticipation. The farmer knelt in the center of the polished hall, feeling the hush descend like a weight. The king's voice, deep and measured, broke the silence. "Olyamide of Udo, your fame precedes you. They say you have never told a lie. I shall test your candor." A silver bowl filled with gold coins appeared, placed at the farmer's feet. "Tell me," the king began, "does this bowl contain 100 gold pieces, or more? If you do not answer correctly, guards will escort you to the dungeons." The audience leaned forward, breath held. Olyamide knelt, studying the coins that glinted like captured sunlight. "My king," he replied softly, "I cannot say how many coins there are without counting. I see that they shine brightly, but I know not their number." A murmur ran through the hall. The king's lips tightened. "Bold answer," he said. "Count them now, swiftly, and speak the truth." Without hesitation, Olyamide counted each coin exactly, one by one, his fingers steady, until he reached 79. 79, my king," he announced. "If more remain unseen, I see none." Gasps spread among the courtiers. Many had expected the farmer to guess, perhaps add a few coins to impress royalty. Instead, Olyamide trusted only what he had counted. The king motioned to an attendant, who tipped the bowl. A single coin slid out, clinking once. "I gave you 80, the king declared. "You missed one." Olyamide bowed his head. "I counted precisely what was before me, sire. I did not presume coins hidden within folds of bowl." The king frowned, rose, and paced as courtiers whispered. Then he struck his staff on the marble floor. "Enough. A second test." He beckoned an advisor, who presented a golden ring set with a ruby. "This ring belonged to my father. If you truly speak the truth, name the moment he wore it most proudly." The hall quieted. Some snickered, believing the question absurd, who could know a king's private memory? But Olyamide did not flinch. "I do not know the exact hour, my king," he said. "But I know it was the day he ended a great war, when he returned this ring to his mother. He was proud when he laid down arms and offered peace." The ruby glowed in torchlight, and the courtiers blinked. Many assumed the farmer would invent some romantic legend. Instead, he spoke plainly of the peace treaty carved into the valley stones. The king's gaze softened for a moment, then sharpened like a blade ready to strike. A hush fell over the court as King Adebola nodded slowly, curiosity mingling with frustration. He lifted his staff once more. "Final trial," he declared. "Answer me truthfully, Olyamide, if I order you to swear by the goddess of justice that you speak only truth, will you obey or break your oath to serve your own honesty?" Many believed the king aimed to corner the farmer. Oaths to deities often bound one to hidden clauses. But Olyamide's mind was clear. "Sire, I swear by the goddess that I will speak only what I know to be true. And if by fate I stray, may I suffer no greater penalty than a lesson in humility." The king's eyes narrowed. "Very well. You spoke your oath before all. Now tell me, why is this service valuable to your people?" Olyamide rose to his feet, voice unwavering. "Honesty brings safety, sire. When neighbors trust each other's word, trade flourishes. When rulers trust their subjects, rebellion fades. My service lies not in flattery but in revealing justice and preventing cruelty." Murmurs filled the hall. The king paced before the dais, staff tapping like a heartbeat. Then he raised a hand. A servant produced a plain wooden bowl, dull and unadorned. "Why this bowl, farmer?" asked Adebola. "Your father's ring and my gold bowl were ornate, yet you confessed to missing one coin. What lesson hides in this wooden dish?" Alyamide leaned forward, meeting the king's gaze. "The plain bowl shows that truth needs no gilding. It holds what it holds, no more, no less. It demands no deception to appear precious, for its value lies in clarity of purpose." The king stood silent, his court awaiting judgment. Finally, Adebola lowered his staff and smiled, a rare gesture that softened his regal features. He stepped from the dais and crouched before Alyamide. "You have shown me a mirror, honest man. My cunning schemes reveal only my own doubts." He rose again and addressed the court. "Let this farmer return to Udo with honor. Let his honesty be enshrined in our laws. May any who lie in service of this throne learn from his example." Courtiers broke into applause, and Alyamide bowed deeply. Despite exhaustion, he felt a surge of hope, that a kingdom once ruled by fear might now thrive on trust. As he departed, lanterns lit his path, and villagers lined the road to greet the man who never lied. Long ago, when the world was new and the gods of Olympus ruled both heaven and earth, there was an age when the lines between mortals and immortals were not as rigid as they are today. During this era, gods often meddled in the lives of men and women, for better or worse. Their favor could bring great blessings, while their wrath could unleash untold horrors. Among these many tales of divine intervention, none is as famous, or as tragic, as the myth of Pandora's box, a story of divine punishment, unchecked curiosity, and the unleashing of unimaginable evils upon the world. In the time after the Great Titanomachy, the war in which the Olympians overthrew the mighty Titans, the earth entered a new age. Zeus, the new king of the gods, reigned supreme from his seat atop Mount Olympus. With him ruled his siblings and children, who held dominion over various aspects of the world. Yet while the gods looked down from their lofty thrones, life on earth was much more humble. Men and women lived simple, toilsome lives, governed by the seasons and the forces of nature. It was a life of hardship but also of peace, until the day Prometheus defied the gods. Prometheus, one of the last remaining Titans who had sided with the Olympians during the Great War, had always been a friend to humanity. His name, which meant forethought, suited him well, for he was both wise and compassionate. Unlike the Olympian gods, who were often distant and indifferent to the plight of mortals, Prometheus saw the potential in mankind. He watched as men struggled to survive in a world filled with darkness and danger. They were vulnerable to the beasts of the night and had no means to defend themselves against the elements. One night, as Prometheus stood on a mountain overlooking a village, he saw a group of mortals huddled around a pitiful pile of damp wood, struggling to ignite a fire. He saw their shivering bodies, heard their whispered prayers to the gods for warmth and protection, and in that moment, Prometheus made a decision that would change the course of human history. He decided to defy Zeus and bring the gift of fire to mankind. Fire was a sacred element, the essence of the gods, and it was forbidden for mortals to possess it. But Prometheus could not bear to see humanity suffer any longer. He climbed to the heavens, sneaking into the domain of the sun god, Helios. There, from the chariot of the sun, Prometheus lit a torch with the divine flame and descended back to earth. He delivered the fire to humanity, teaching them how to harness its power, how to build tools, cook their food, and protect themselves from the dangers of the night. With fire, humanity flourished. Villages became cities, and soon mankind was no longer at the mercy of the natural world. But Prometheus's act of defiance did not go unnoticed. Zeus, ever watchful from his throne on Olympus, saw the flames burning in the mortal world and knew what had happened. His anger was swift and terrible. How dare a mere titan defy him, the king of the gods? Zeus's wrath was not just for Prometheus but also for humanity, for accepting the gift of fire. They had benefited from the power of the gods without paying the price for such a blessing. And so, Zeus devised a cruel punishment. For Prometheus, he crafted a torment unlike any other. The Titan was bound in unbreakable chains and cast upon a desolate mountain peak. Each day, an enormous eagle, Zeus's own symbol, would descend from the heavens and feast upon Prometheus's liver. And each night, the liver would regenerate, only for the eagle to return the next day and repeat the torment. This cycle of eternal suffering was meant to serve as a reminder to all who dared defy the will of Zeus. But Zeus's vengeance did not end with Prometheus. He also sought to punish mankind, for they had dared to accept the fire that was never meant for them. Zeus's plan was devious and subtle. He would not strike humanity down with a bolt of lightning or send a flood to wipe them out, as he had done in the past. Instead, he would craft a punishment that would come from within their own ranks. He would create a being so beautiful and so alluring that mankind would welcome her with open arms, unaware of the destruction she would bring. This being was Pandora, the first woman, crafted by the gods as both a gift and a curse to mankind. Hephaestus, the god of fire and the forge, was tasked with shaping her form. He crafted her from clay, molding her with such care and precision that she appeared to be alive even before the gods breathed life into her. Her skin was smooth and flawless, her hair as soft as the finest silk, and her eyes sparkled with an unnatural beauty that no mortal could resist. Once her body was complete, the gods each bestowed upon Pandora their own unique gifts. Athena, the goddess of wisdom, taught her the skills of weaving and craftsmanship, ensuring that she would be both clever and industrious. Aphrodite, the goddess of love and beauty, endowed her with irresistible charm and grace, making her the object of desire for all who laid eyes upon her. Hermes, the messenger god, gave her a cunning and deceitful mind, a quick wit that would allow her to manipulate those around her. And finally, Zeus himself gave her the most dangerous gift of all, curiosity. Pandora was a marvel to behold. Her beauty and charm were unmatched, and when she was finally brought to life, she was sent down to the mortal world with a dowry, a large, intricately decorated jar. The jar, sealed tightly, was given to her with one strict command: under no circumstances was she to open it. The gods knew that within this jar lay the evils that had been locked away from the world since the dawn of time, evils that were never meant to see the light of day. Pandora was given in marriage to Epimetheus, the brother of Prometheus. Epimetheus, whose name meant afterthought, was kind-hearted but somewhat foolish. Prometheus had warned his brother never to accept gifts from the gods, for they often carried hidden dangers. But when Epimetheus saw Pandora standing before him, her beauty so radiant and her smile so sweet, he could not resist. He welcomed her into his home and took her as his wife, unaware of the disaster that was soon to come. For a time, all was well. Pandora and Epimetheus lived happily together, and Pandora did her best to obey the command of the gods. She kept the jar hidden away in a corner of their home, never touching it or even glancing in its direction. But as the days passed, Pandora's curiosity grew stronger. The jar seemed to call to her in her dreams, whispering secrets that only she could hear. She began to wonder what could possibly be inside. Why had the gods forbidden her from opening it? What harm could come from simply peeking into its depths? Pandora tried to resist, but her curiosity became an obsession. She would wake in the middle of the night, staring at the jar, her mind racing with thoughts of what it might contain. Eventually, she could bear it no longer. One fateful day, when Epimetheus was away hunting, Pandora crept over to the jar. Her hands trembled as she reached for the lid, her heart pounding in her chest. She hesitated for a moment, remembering the gods' warnings, but the temptation was too great. With a swift motion, she pried the lid open. At first, nothing happened. The jar appeared to be empty, and Pandora let out a sigh of relief. But her relief was short-lived. Suddenly, a dark cloud erupted from the jar, filling the room with a foul, oppressive air. From within the jar came a chorus of whispers, moans, and cries, voices of despair that sent shivers down Pandora's spine. Out of the jar came the very evils that the gods had locked away at the beginning of time: sickness, plague, war, famine, hatred, greed, envy, and death. These spirits swirled around Pandora, their shapes shifting and twisting as they spread out into the world, infecting everything they touched. Pandora could feel their cold, clammy fingers brushing against her skin as they escaped from the jar, and she fell to her knees, overwhelmed with guilt and terror. She desperately tried to close the jar, but it was too late. The evils had already been unleashed upon the world, and there was no way to recapture them. In her panic, Pandora knocked the jar over, spilling its contents further. But as the jar tipped, she noticed something curious: a small, glowing light remained inside. This was Elpis, the spirit of hope, the one gift left by the gods to temper the horrors that had been unleashed. Trembling, Pandora reached into the jar and carefully cradled the glowing light in her hands. Though she had released great suffering into the world, she now also held the power to help humanity endure it. Hope was all that remained to counterbalance the evils she had let loose. Slowly, Pandora closed the jar, sealing it tightly once more. But hope was not meant to be contained. It slipped through her fingers and spread out into the world, following in the wake of the evils that had already escaped. It was a faint light, small and fragile, but it was enough to give mankind the strength to endure the hardships they now faced. When Epimetheus returned home, he found Pandora weeping on the floor, the empty jar lying beside her. She confessed what she had done, her voice filled with sorrow and regret. Epimetheus was heartbroken, not only for the suffering that had been unleashed upon the world but also for the pain his wife now carried in her heart. Yet as they held each other in the dim light of their home, they took solace in the knowledge that hope still remained. From that day forward, the world was forever changed. The evils that Pandora had unleashed spread far and wide, bringing sickness, war, and misery to every corner of the earth. But hope, though small and elusive, lingered in the hearts of men and women. It gave them the strength to endure even the darkest of days, reminding them that no matter how much they suffered, there was always a glimmer of light waiting for them. The gods watched from Olympus as the world below descended into chaos. Zeus, having seen his plan come to fruition, was pleased. His punishment had been just, and the mortals now understood the dangers of defying the gods. But even Zeus, in all his wisdom, could not have foreseen how resilient humanity would become with hope in their hearts. Though the world was now filled with suffering, it was also filled with the strength to endure it. Pandora's name became synonymous with both curiosity and disobedience, a reminder of the dangers of seeking forbidden knowledge. Her story was passed down through the generations, a cautionary tale to those who would follow in her footsteps. Yet it was also a story of redemption, for though Pandora had unleashed great evils upon the world, she had also given humanity its greatest gift, hope. In the years that followed, Pandora and Epimetheus lived a quiet life, away from the cities that now teemed with strife and discord. Pandora spent the rest of her days trying to undo the harm she had caused, spreading kindness and hope wherever she could. Though she could never fully atone for what she had done, she found peace in knowing that she had given the world a way to endure the suffering she had unleashed. As the centuries passed, the memory of Pandora's box became a symbol of both destruction and salvation. The lid remained tightly sealed, but the lessons it held were not forgotten. The world had changed, but it had not been destroyed. The mortals now knew that the gods could be both generous and cruel, but they also understood that hope was a gift that could outlast even the darkest of curses. The myth of Pandora's box endures to this day, a tale woven into the fabric of human history. It reminds us that even when the world seems bleak and full of suffering, hope still shines as brightly as it did in Pandora's trembling hands. It is a force that can never be contained, a light that can never be extinguished. No matter what evils may befall the earth, hope will always remain, waiting for us to find it once again. Nestled among the rugged Sierra Nevada peaks and ensconced by the crystal-clear waters of Lake Tahoe, an enduring mystery has long stirred the hearts and imaginations of locals and visitors alike. Over the centuries, tales of a mysterious creature, half myth, half living legend, have been passed down in hushed tones and spirited debates. Its story is woven into the very fabric of the lake, a narrative that spans generations, scientific quests, and a deep-rooted respect for the natural world. This is the story of the Tahoe Sea Monster, an enigma that beckons explorers, scientists, and storytellers to delve into the depths of both water and memory. In the mid-1800s, as prospectors and pioneers carved paths through the wilderness of Northern California, Lake Tahoe was already a realm of whispers and half-forgotten lore. Among the native Washoe people, the lake was a sacred place, a living entity with moods and secrets beyond mortal understanding. The elders told of a water spirit, a guardian that drifted beneath the shimmering surface, its form as elusive as the morning mist. This spirit was said to be a keeper of balance, a benevolent force that emerged during times of change, warning of both danger and renewal. Early settler journals reveal a mix of awe and trepidation when describing their encounters with the unknown. One faded journal entry tells of a rugged prospector who, on a fog-drenched evening, observed ripples spreading in perfect concentric circles, a disturbance too deliberate to be the wind's handiwork. He described the movement as if a giant, unseen hand had gently stirred the water, leaving behind a dark silhouette that vanished as swiftly as it appeared. Over time, such accounts coalesced into a rich tapestry of folklore, evolving with each retelling to become a cherished, if mysterious, part of Tahoe's identity. Local communities, gathering around roaring campfires beneath star-strewn skies, recounted their own brush with the inexplicable. Stories of Old Tom, the veteran fisherman whose eyes had witnessed something extraordinary on a tempestuous night, became the stuff of legend. As he steered his creaking boat through a sudden squall, Tom claimed that the lake itself seemed to awaken, its surface rippling in response to an unseen, mesmerizing force. His voice, weathered by years of hard living, carried the weight of both fear and wonder. These early encounters planted the seeds of a legend that would persist through the ages, growing more elaborate and captivating with each generation. As decades passed, the legend of the Tahoe Sea Monster wove itself into the local culture, becoming an inseparable thread in the tapestry of community life. In small frontier towns dotting the lake's edge, every whisper of wind and every ripple on the water evoked memories of that first mysterious presence. Elders spoke of nights when the lake would shimmer under a spectral glow, a phenomenon that was interpreted as the gentle caress of the spirit guardian, a reminder that the natural world was far more mysterious than it seemed. Seasonal festivals and community gatherings often featured storytelling sessions, where tales of the monster were shared alongside songs and local legends. Families would huddle together, their faces illuminated by the flickering light of lanterns and the dying embers of bonfires, as storytellers recounted the strange, unexplained happenings witnessed on moonlit nights. These sessions were less about instilling fear and more about celebrating the wonder and unpredictability of nature, a call to respect the forces that lay beyond human control. In one particularly memorable evening recounted by a local schoolteacher named Maria, the children were entranced by the story of a shimmering creature seen only at the break of dawn. According to her, a young boy once claimed that while paddling a small rowboat with his family, he saw something move gracefully beneath the water, a long, sinuous form that glowed softly as if illuminated from within. The incident left an indelible mark on his young mind, and he grew up to become one of the most passionate advocates for preserving Tahoe's natural wonders. Maria's tale, told with a mix of wistfulness and reverence, encapsulated the spirit of a community that revered its legends as much as its natural beauty. By the latter part of the 20th century, modern technology began to intersect with age-old lore. In the early 1990s, as digital cameras and portable recording devices became increasingly accessible, a new wave of enthusiasts emerged, determined to capture definitive evidence of the Tahoe Sea Monster. Skeptics and believers alike began to document their experiences, sharing footage on local television and burgeoning internet forums. One crisp autumn evening, a group of friends on a camping trip near the lake found themselves at the heart of an uncanny phenomenon. Huddled around a crackling campfire, they listened intently as their host, a seasoned naturalist with a deep love for local myths, recounted his recent encounter. He spoke softly of an inexplicable ripple that seemed to move with an eerie, deliberate grace. "It wasn't like any wave I'd ever seen," he said, his voice trembling between excitement and disbelief. "It was as if the lake was waking up, its surface rippling in response to something enormous and unseen." His account described a creature with a body that merged seamlessly with the surrounding water, its form both mesmerizing and disconcertingly alien. The encounter was soon corroborated by other accounts. A young couple, setting out for a serene dawn paddle, described the early light revealing a dark silhouette gliding just beneath their boat. They recalled the moment vividly, the stillness of the morning, the unexpected movement that sent shivers down their spines, and the shared, unspoken understanding that they had witnessed something extraordinary. Their shaky descriptions, filled with equal parts wonder and fear, quickly circulated in local newspapers and online message boards, sparking renewed interest in the ancient legend. Amateur researchers and thrill seekers, armed with modern technology and driven by an insatiable curiosity, began to mount expeditions. They established floating observation posts and deployed underwater cameras, capturing hours of footage in a bid to document the elusive creature. One expedition, led by a trio of dedicated locals, spent an entire week adrift on a small motorboat. Their log entries recorded moments of tense anticipation, long, silent nights interrupted by brief flashes of movement, and the collective hope that one day, the monster would reveal itself in full. These modern encounters, blending technology with traditional lore, added layers of complexity to the story of the Tahoe Sea Monster, transforming it from mere folklore into a subject of serious scientific inquiry. As the fascination with the legend grew, it soon attracted the attention of professional researchers. Among them was Dr. Evelyn Carter, a marine biologist renowned for her work on freshwater ecosystems. With a background in both classical zoology and modern environmental science, Dr. Carter found herself irresistibly drawn to the mystery of Lake Tahoe. Convinced that the legend held more than just fanciful tales, she assembled a team of experts to undertake a comprehensive investigation of the lake's hidden depths. Dr. Carter's team set up a base camp on the lake's northern shore, a spot chosen not only for its historical significance but also for its high incidence of reported sightings. The team's equipment was a blend of cutting-edge technology and time-tested methods, state-of-the-art sonar devices, high-resolution thermal cameras, and even experimental underwater drones were all deployed in an effort to capture concrete evidence. Night after night, the researchers pored over data, their eyes straining to decipher the subtle signals that might indicate the presence of the elusive creature. The investigation was punctuated by moments of unexpected wonder. On one particularly cold winter night, as a thick fog rolled over the lake, the team recorded an unusual burst of sonar activity. The screens flickered to life, briefly revealing the unmistakable outline of a massive, undulating form moving just beneath the surface. Although the image was blurry and fleeting, it was enough to send waves of excitement through the team. In her meticulously kept journal, Dr. Carter wrote, "Tonight, the lake whispered its secret, a slow, deliberate movement that challenged everything we thought we knew about this ecosystem." Local historians contributed to the investigation as well, unearthing ancient documents and oral histories that painted a picture of a creature whose appearances coincided with environmental shifts. These records, some dating back to the early 1900s, suggested that the mysterious being was not a new anomaly but perhaps a relic of a bygone era, a survivor of a once thriving ecosystem that had weathered the relentless march of time and change. The collaboration between scientists, historians, and local residents transformed the study of the Tahoe Sea Monster into a multifaceted exploration of both natural history and cultural heritage. Despite the advances in technology and the rigor of scientific inquiry, the mystery of the Tahoe Sea Monster defied neat classification. To many locals, the creature was not merely an object of scientific curiosity but a symbol of the wild, untamable spirit of Lake Tahoe. Stories passed down through families resonated with personal meaning, a shared belief in the magic of the natural world that could not be quantified by instruments or measurements. In one memorable town meeting held in a rustic community center, heated debates broke out between staunch skeptics and passionate believers. Older residents recounted eerie encounters from their youth, an inexplicable glimmer in the water here, a soft, haunting call there, that had left an indelible mark on their memories. Younger attendees, armed with smartphones and a skeptical eye, listened with a mix of curiosity and disbelief. Yet even in the face of modern rationality, the enduring pull of the legend was undeniable. For many, the monster was not just a curiosity, it was a reminder that nature held secrets beyond the reach of human understanding. During one particularly animated session, a local fisherman named Harold recounted a night when he and his crew had been caught in an unexpected calm. "The water was so still, you'd think it was a giant mirror," he said, his voice low and reflective. "And then, out of nowhere, I saw something move, a long, graceful shape that seemed to glide effortlessly through the water. It wasn't menacing, but it was awe-inspiring. I knew then that the lake had more to offer than just fish and beauty." Harold's story, steeped in personal experience and raw emotion, lent a human dimension to the mystery, a perspective that science could measure in data, but not in the beating heart of those who had felt its presence. This chapter of the investigation blurred the lines between scientific inquiry and the rich, intangible realm of myth. Dr. Carter and her colleagues found themselves pondering questions that transcended traditional research. Could a creature so deeply interwoven with local folklore be understood solely through the lens of biology? Or was it, in some profound sense, a manifestation of the collective hopes, fears, and memories of an entire community? These questions, unanswerable yet deeply compelling, added another layer of mystery to the ongoing saga of the Tahoe Sea Monster. The quest to unravel the secrets of Lake Tahoe took many forms. For some, it was a scientific mission; for others, it was a personal pilgrimage into the unknown. Among the latter was a freelance photographer named Lydia Ramirez, whose lifelong passion for nature and storytelling had drawn her to the lake. Lydia spent months exploring the shoreline, capturing ethereal images of the mist-covered water, gnarled pine trees, and the ever-changing light that danced upon the lake's surface. Armed with nothing more than a camera, a notebook, and an insatiable curiosity, she sought to capture the elusive spirit of Tahoe in every frame. Lydia's journey was punctuated by moments of serendipity and quiet wonder. On a crisp autumn morning, as the first golden rays of sunlight kissed the water, she stumbled upon a secluded cove that seemed almost untouched by time. The silence was profound, broken only by the gentle lapping of water against smooth stones. As she set up her camera to capture the delicate interplay of light and shadow, she felt a presence, a subtle, almost imperceptible energy that filled the air. In that moment, Lydia was convinced that she was not alone. Later, reviewing her photographs, she discovered a faint, blurred outline near the water's edge, a shape that she could only describe as the ghost of the legend. Though she could not conclusively prove the creature's existence, Lydia's images quickly became a talking point among local enthusiasts, reigniting the debate about what truly lurked beneath the shimmering surface of Lake Tahoe. The photographer's work underscored an important truth: the mystery of the Tahoe Sea Monster was as much about the human experience as it was about an unknown creature. Each whispered legend, every half-remembered tale, and all the tentative scientific measurements pointed to a deeper, almost mystical connection between the people and the lake. The monster, whether a living creature or an embodiment of nature's ineffable spirit, became a mirror reflecting the hopes, dreams, and fears of those who lived along its shores. As the years went by and the body of evidence grew, one thing remained certain: the Tahoe Sea Monster was an enigma that defied complete explanation. Even as Dr. Carter's team published their preliminary findings and shared their thermal images and sonar readings, many questions lingered. What exactly was the biological makeup of this mysterious entity? Could it be a surviving relic from an ancient ecosystem, or had it evolved into something wholly new? And perhaps most hauntingly, what did its sporadic appearances signify for the health and future of Lake Tahoe? Late one summer evening, while reviewing data from a particularly active period, a young researcher named Marcus stayed long after everyone else had left the field camp. The quiet hum of the equipment and the rhythmic lapping of water against the dock became the backdrop to his private musings. He scribbled notes into his journal, reflecting on the possibility that the creature might serve as a living barometer of environmental change, a sentinel quietly warning of shifts in the ecosystem that even the most sophisticated instruments could not detect. Marcus's personal reflections, mingled with the scientific data, captured the essence of the mystery. Sometimes, the most profound truths are found not in definitive answers but in the questions that the creature might serve as a living barometer of environmental change, a sentinel quietly warning of shifts in the ecosystem that even the most sophisticated instruments could not detect. Marcus's personal reflections, mingled with the scientific data, captured the essence of the mystery. Sometimes, the most profound truths are found not in definitive answers but in the questions that inspire us to look deeper. This chapter, filled with the unresolved and the unexplained, became a testament to the enduring allure of mystery. The community, the researchers, and even the skeptics began to appreciate that some stories were meant to be lived rather than solved, a narrative that reminded them that nature, in all its complexity, rarely offered tidy conclusions. Beyond the confines of scientific expeditions and historical accounts, the legend of the Tahoe Sea Monster continued to weave its magic through the lives of everyday people. In local schools, children learned about the creature as part of their cultural heritage, their textbooks interspersed with sketches of a majestic, serpentine figure gliding beneath the waves. Festivals celebrating the lake's natural beauty often featured parades, storytelling contests, and art installations inspired by the monster. These celebrations were as much a tribute to the lake's inherent mystery as they were a reminder of the timeless bond between nature and community. One winter, a small town near the lake organized a Mystery Night, an event where locals gathered in the town square under a canopy of stars. Elderly residents recounted their personal memories, the time when a sudden calm descended over the water, when a giant ripple disturbed the still surface, and when a mysterious, shimmering form was glimpsed in the dark. The night was filled with laughter, hushed gasps, and a collective reverence for the unknown. For many, the monster was not a creature to be feared but rather a guardian, a living emblem of the lake's ancient soul. It represented the wonder of the natural world, a reminder that despite the relentless march of progress, there remained mysteries that defied easy explanation. Local artisans, too, contributed to this cultural mosaic. Woodcarvers and painters drew inspiration from the monster's sinuous form, creating works of art that captured its elusive beauty. In cozy cafes and community centers, discussions would often turn to the question, what if the Tahoe Sea Monster is more than just a creature, but a symbol of the natural world's enduring spirit? These debates, rich with personal insight and creative energy, transformed the monster into a metaphor, a call to appreciate the unpredictable, often unexplainable, magic that underpins the rhythms of life. For many who grew up near Lake Tahoe, the monster was a childhood legend that evolved with them. One such individual was Jamie, a local who had spent countless summers swimming in the lake and winters listening to the hushed tales of elders. As a child, Jamie had once dared to camp out by the lakeshore, determined to catch a glimpse of the creature. That night, as a cool breeze swept across the water and shadows danced among the trees, Jamie's heart pounded with equal parts fear and excitement. Though no definitive sighting occurred, the experience left an indelible mark, a sense that the lake was alive with stories and secrets waiting to be discovered. Years later, Jamie returned to Tahoe, now as a writer and storyteller. With a pen in hand and memories vivid as the autumn leaves, Jamie began chronicling the many facets of the monster's legend. Through interviews with fishermen, longtime residents, and even the skeptical newcomers, Jamie wove together a narrative that was as much about community identity as it was about an elusive creature. The resulting work, filled with personal anecdotes and heartfelt reflections, resonated deeply with readers. It was a story not just of mystery, but of the human need to connect, to nature, to one another, and to the legends that give life its depth and meaning. For Jamie and many others, the monster became a symbol of transformation, a reminder that the mysteries of life were not obstacles to be solved, but experiences to be cherished. Every ripple on the lake, every whisper of wind through the pines, spoke of possibilities far greater than the sum of our understanding. As the seasons changed and the years marched on, the saga of the Tahoe Sea Monster took on new dimensions. New technologies emerged, offering unprecedented ways to explore the underwater realm. Researchers now employed advanced 3D mapping techniques, remote-operated submersibles, and sophisticated sensors to probe the lake's depths. Yet, for all these advances, the essence of the mystery remained intact, a reminder that some phenomena elude quantification, defying our attempts to neatly classify them. Dr. Carter's team, now enriched by collaborations with international researchers, published a comprehensive study on the lake's ecosystem. Their findings suggested that the creature's appearances were closely tied to subtle environmental cycles, a dynamic interplay between water temperature, chemical composition, and even lunar cycles. The study sparked debates in scientific journals and among environmentalists, further blurring the line between myth and measurable phenomena. While some argued that the data pointed to a previously undiscovered species adapted to Lake Tahoe's unique conditions, others maintained that the monster was an emergent symbol, a living reminder of the lake's ever-changing nature. In a climactic series of events, a joint expedition brought together scientists, local residents, and even representatives from indigenous communities. Over the course of several days, the group spent hours on the lake, pooling their observations and personal insights. At one point, as twilight surrendered to the night, a gentle ripple moved across the water, a silent, elegant ballet of light and shadow that left everyone awestruck. In that shared moment, doubts gave way to a collective understanding. The Tahoe Sea Monster was as much a part of the lake's soul as the towering pines and the rugged mountains that watched over it. In the quiet aftermath of the expedition, as dawn broke over a still, reflective lake, each participant carried away a piece of the mystery. For the scientists, it was an affirmation of nature's complexity, a challenge to the notion that every phenomenon could be neatly explained. For the locals, it was a rekindling of a timeless bond with the land they had cherished for generations. And for the storytellers, it was yet another chapter in an ever-evolving narrative, a narrative that would continue to inspire and mystify long after the latest measurements had been recorded. Jamie, now in the soft light of a new day, sat by the water's edge and penned a final reflection. The Tahoe Sea Monster, Jamie wrote, is not just a creature of myth or a subject of scientific inquiry. It is the embodiment of our deepest desire to connect, to a past filled with wonder, to a present that challenges our perceptions, and to a future that promises more mysteries than answers. This sentiment echoed the feelings of many who had been touched by the legend, a belief that sometimes, the beauty of a mystery lies in its very uncertainty. As the lake shimmered in the early sunlight, it seemed to whisper promises of new stories waiting to be told. The legend of the Tahoe Sea Monster, enriched by science, folklore, and personal journeys, had grown into something far more expansive than any single account could capture. It was a living saga, a confluence of memories, data, art, and the indomitable human spirit. And though many questions remained unanswered, the mystery itself was a source of inspiration, urging all who encountered it to look beyond the surface and embrace the unknown with open hearts. Years later, the legend endures as an essential part of Tahoe's identity. Children still gather around campfires to hear tales of a mysterious guardian that lives beneath the shimmering surface, while scientists continue to debate the creature's origins in academic circles. Artisans and writers alike find in the monster a muse, a symbol of the ever-present wonder that nature offers if only one dares to look deeply. The Tahoe Sea Monster, whether it be a relic of ancient evolutionary marvels or a modern-day enigma, has transcended its origins to become a bridge between the past and the future. It reminds us that nature is not merely a collection of data points and observable phenomena but a vast, living tapestry of experiences, emotions, and mysteries waiting to be unraveled. Every ripple on the lake, every shadow beneath the surface, speaks of a world that is fluid and ever-changing, a world that beckons us to question, explore, and dream. For those who find solace in the interplay of light and water, in the quiet majesty of towering pines and distant mountains, the legend remains an invitation. It is an invitation to step beyond the confines of everyday life and to embrace the mystery that surrounds us all. And in that embrace, we come to understand that some of the most beautiful truths are those that defy explanation, that linger like a whispered promise in the cool, clear air of Lake Tahoe. In this expanded chronicle, the story of the Tahoe Sea Monster has grown not only in detail but in the emotional resonance of its characters and community. From the ancient lore of the Washoe elders to the modern quests of scientists and storytellers, the legend endures as a multifaceted narrative, a reminder that some mysteries are best experienced rather than solved.